This is CBC Vancouver News.
We believe these attacks were completely random stranger attacks.
Two brutal assaults in downtown Vancouver leave one man dead and another severely injured. A suspect has been arrested.
We talk about how we react. It's of zero comfort to the victims and their families and their friends.
Plus,
any loss of life at an early age is a tragedy unto itself.
a BC First Nation declares a state of emergency after the death of a female youth worker and a man north of Tofino. And gold again. A BC shot putter defends his title at the Paralympic Games. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. A man has been killed and another severely injured after two violent attacks in downtown Vancouver earlier in the morning. Police call it random and unprovoked. A suspect has been arrested. The CBC's Georgie Smythe has more on the bloody morning and concerns about safety.
A horror scene in Vancouver's downtown. Smears of fresh blood stain the sidewalk. Here, a man in his 50s was randomly attacked with a knife and had one of his hands cut off. Minutes later, on a nearby block, a second attack, this one fatal. A man believed to be in his 70s killed. His identity hasn't been made public. An hour later, a 34-year-old suspect was taken into custody after he was found yelling at strangers a few kilometres away. Police say the man was out on probation for an assault last year.
This appears to be a very troubled man who has a lengthy history of mental health-related incidents, which have resulted in more than 60 documented contacts with police throughout Metro Vancouver.
Unsettling details for a city reeling from the randomness of the attacks.
I'm sure Vancouverites are sick of hearing how quickly that we reacted to a violent crime. We would rather have a situation where we're not put in the situation in the first place, where these violent acts don't happen because we're treating, we're pivoting, we're actually solving the root causes of these problems.
Other attacks over the past year have spurred a heated public debate about the nexus of mental health and crime on the streets of Vancouver, but criminologists say prevention is not that simple.
If they are random, they can't be predicted. And so having more police on the streets, that means that they have to be at random, at the right spot, at the right time when these things are going to happen. And the probability of that happening is very low. And what is a much better response is the provision of more social services.
The fresh worries about public safety come just weeks before a provincial election. How to respond is likely to become a key part of the campaign. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Howsett First Nation on Vancouver Island is declaring a state of emergency after two young people died over the long weekend. Police are investigating the death of a female youth worker and an adult man in the community on Flores Island, about 20 kilometres northwest of Tofino. The Howsett chief says the deaths are not related. Police responded to a call on a home on Robson Avenue Saturday evening where paramedics were giving a man medical attention. He was sent to hospital and later died.
Any loss of life at an early age is a tragedy unto itself. And in a small, tight-knit community such as a Howsett, it has such a widespread impact on everyone. Every single family is impacted, either directly or indirectly.
A man has been arrested, and Mounties say he and the victim did know each other. Investigators note this is an isolated incident with no risk to the public. A bail hearing is set for September 11th. One of northern BC's major employers has announced the closure of more sawmills. Canfor says by the end of December, it will wind down operations at its Fort St. John sawmill and the Plateau sawmill in Vanderhoof, a community of about 5,000 people, 100 kilometres west of Prince George. It says it will impact about 500 employees. It will remove almost 700 million board feet of annual production capacity from its BC operations. Canfor says it's looking at exploring divestment opportunities in northern BC because of a serious drop in available timber supply. A union rep says it's yet another blow to an industry that's seen a series of closures over the last year. BC's Forest Minister says the province will support workers and communities and blames rising duties from the U.S. BC Ferries has cancelled almost 40 sailings on its busy Swartz Bay to Wasson route through Sunday because of mechanical troubles. It comes amid a busy summer travel season. The corporation says it's figuring out how to plan for the future. And as Mira Baines reports, a community group in Washington State is stepping up efforts for better service amid ferry woes there.
BC Ferries says the Queen of New Westminster is out of service for repairs to its propulsion system until at least the end of the week.
Both slowing the vessel down, but also it makes it unsafe for it to sail in any frequent basis. So we've had to cancel some sailings yesterday, and we've also canceled them right through till the end of Sunday for this vessel.
Some customers are being moved to alternative sailings, or refunds are being offered in case of cancellation. More sailings have been added on Saturday. So far, compared to last year, the number of sailings canceled due to mechanical issues is up. In the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year, 660 sailings were canceled. In comparison, the year before, there were 643 sailings canceled. BC Ferries says planning for the future is key in supporting the system.
We have 5 other vessels that are also over 50 years old. It makes our work challenging and the work of our engineers challenging when we do have breakdowns.
However, staffing-related cancellations have dropped by 44%.
There's always a struggle to get enough workers. We just had a fairly reasonable wage increase. Hopefully that'll bring people to the ferries to work.
In Washington State, the ferry system is under strain too, mirroring similar issues with an aging fleet. A group called Islanders for Ferry Action says new ferries are being built and the margin for error is slim.
These are boats that are untested. They're boats that haven't been built before. They're boats that haven't sailed in the Puget Sound before. They're boats that our engineers haven't worked on before. We have world-class engineers, but they're going to be learning too.
Last fall, BC Ferries issued a request for expressions of interest to build up to 7 new vessels. The contract is expected to be awarded by December of this year. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
We know affording rent is a challenge for many British Columbians. Small businesses are no exceptions. It's why some are calling for more measures to protect them and neighborhood vibrancy. The CBC's Benit Breach looks into one tool being explored: commercial rent control.
Yeah, I think it's like behind there. There's some...
Here on 12th Street in New Westminster, charming shops and flavorful local restaurants are at the heart of the neighborhood.
It's also a huge community hub for the city. So there are culturally important and significant grocers and restaurants and salons.
But
in cities that are growing rapidly, that are densifying, we see more and more chain stores, and we want to really retain the local small business feel.
With more development, soaring land values, and rising rents,
some, like Councillor Henderson, are calling for commercial rent control as a way to protect small businesses from big rent hikes and really help preserve the charm of neighborhoods like this.
The idea is to limit how much landlords can charge or increase rents for businesses, similar to residential rents.
I have this here.
For Albert Kamba, 12th Street is where dreams come true.
This is me, Albert Kamba.
That's your name?
Yeah.
What's the story behind this?
We can do it too.
You can open your dream?
Yes, we can.
From loyal customers to training newcomers,
I'm very proud of this. And I'm proud for the community too. They support me from day one.
12th Street is an older neighborhood, less developed, mostly single or two-story shops. That's why it's been more affordable for small businesses like Kamba's.
Before it was cheap. I didn't have money. I can't afford the downtown.
While his barber shop is bustling, Albert worries about the future. He says his rent has risen 60% since he opened in 2006.
Now we scared a lot. We're gonna sell $50. Who's coming with the $50? Really tough. See you next time. But what are we gonna do? We just keep going.
Up the street, Kamba has a new neighbor, Catalyst Kinetics has bought this space. The group of chiropractors, physiotherapists, and other health practitioners was priced out from its formal rental space in Burnaby. The CEO says their rent doubled twice in 13 years.
Significant rent increases are tough to swallow.
Councillor Henderson has heard similar concerns. In February, New Westminster Council passed a motion from Henderson. It asked the province to give local governments the authority to allow special economic zones where small businesses' rents can be protected.
Why are we allowing landlords to pass down the costs to small businesses who are owned by families in our communities? We ought to support them. There could be an opportunity to create some sort of cultural designation for areas like this that have significant cultural importance. Bean stew, cabbage rolls, you just don't find places like this anymore.
The BC government acknowledges pressures on small businesses, but says there's no plans for commercial rent control right now. But still, those calls go beyond BC.
In May, Toronto City Council also passed a motion calling on the Ontario government to bring in commercial rent control for small businesses, among other relief measures. The province of Ontario has not yet responded to the city motion. Statistics Canada says average retail rent has risen 6.5% across Canada and 3.7% in BC between the first quarter of 2019 and the second quarter of 2024. Now keep in mind, the data does look at a wide range of retail properties, from shopping malls to local stores.
And there are some who don't favor commercial rent control.
Commercial rent control is just a drop in the bucket, frankly.
Stefanico says if commercial rents are limited, landlords may not invest in retail spaces, worried about a return on their investments. He says this could mean fewer spaces to rent and less maintenance.
The root of the problem really comes back to how expensive it is to run a small business in BC these days. Labor costs are rising, delivery costs are rising, buying the supplies you need for your business are rising.
And then factor in property taxes. Experts say tenants, especially in older single-story businesses, are hit hard because they're taxed based on the property's future potential. Many times, small businesses have to cover those costs. For example, this year, the average property tax for a business building in New Westminster will be around $32,000.
Property tax can be a killer for tenants, even when they're in the middle of the lease.
The government says it has been working to reduce taxes for small businesses. A new law last year offers property tax relief to those who qualify.
But even with lower taxes, some businesses still struggle to make a profit.
A report from BC's restaurant industry found over 50% of food service and hospitality businesses are unprofitable. That's a nearly five-fold increase since 2019. It also found restaurant bankruptcies rose by 48% over 10 months. Rent hikes, pricier supply, and rising property taxes are among the reasons why.
And another question is, how do you define a small local business? Well, mom and pop shops can be locally owned, so can chain restaurants.
And I think that's really sometimes the nuance of deciding, well, who would this commercial rent control apply to?
He says most landlords want their tenants to succeed, and it's important to find other balanced solutions. Now back on 12th Street, some are doing just that. Catalyst Kinetics is now a landlord, renting to 3 other tenants, and they hope to keep those rents affordable.
I think we owe it to the community, we owe it to small business to do what we can to support them.
And down the street, owning a storefront bookstore seemed impossible for Samita Manhas until her landlord offered a more affordable rent.
We are lucky that we have the landlord that we have, and not everybody has that, and it shouldn't be based on luck.
More reasons why some small businesses want more tools to help keep local stores open and thriving. Benit Brach, CBC News, New Westminster.
As for Councillor Henderson's motion, the BC government says it might be debated at the Union of BC Municipalities Conference later this month. Fighting plastic pollution. We'll show you a new test from UBC researchers on our water. You'll want to see this. This province is still top of the world podium when it comes to flinging very heavy objects. BC's Greg Stewart has successfully defended his Paralympic title at the men's shot put F46 final in Paris.
16.75 Paralympic best record.
The 7'2" thrower from Kamloops won with a season best toss of 16.38 meters. He returned to major competition in May after he retired 2 years ago. He won gold in Tokyo with a record-setting throw of 16.75 meters. He beat his competitor from India.
I remember on his last throw, I wasn't watching, but when he threw really far throws, he would always get really really loud and whatnot, and I didn't hear that. And so when I looked up at the screen and I think he threw like 16, 15, I was like, okay, I have this is mine.
Stewart says he plans to compete at the Paralympics in LA in 2028, but there's another project before that. He's getting married in just a few weeks. Well done. We know plastic pollution is a rapidly rising problem, but what about the plastics we can't see with our own eyes? UBC researchers have now developed a new way to test for microplastics in the water we drink. More now from the CBC's Darius Madavi.
We will grab those water as our sample.
A single drop of water. That's all we need to test for the presence of microplastics.
We found that in a tiny droplet of water, and we detect about 100 million levels of the plastic particles.
To reach those levels, what was pure water only had to sit in a plastic container for a few minutes.
When I first see the result, I was shocked.
Those numbers come from a new testing method developed by researchers at UBC.
We can create a portable device that can be more affordable, more accessible, and can be used by the general public.
Designed to keep testing prices low, the device is 3D printed using biodegradable materials, and an LED flashlight and wireless microscope are mounted on top. The sample, which is prepared in a matter of minutes by adding fluorescent labels that bind to plastic particles, is inserted. Then the microscope transmits photos of the sample to a cell phone, which runs an algorithm to determine how many plastic particles are present.
For each test, it's just the cost of 1.5 cents.
Experts say that pricing would be a huge draw, and that this kind of innovation has been sorely needed.
Traditional microplastics research can be incredibly resource intensive. I have seen costs on the scale of $1,000 for the processing of a single sample.
The demand for this kind of testing has been rising in recent years as we learn more about the impacts microplastics can have.
Unfortunately, more than half the plastics produced include compounds that are known to be hazardous to environmental and human health.
Some direct health impacts have already been established, including endocrine disruption, but research has been hampered by various hurdles, access to testing being one of the big ones.
Those data are much needed, and they're critical as the scientific community embarks down the road to determining actual human health risks of microplastic ingestion.
This work is especially important in today's world, since microplastics can be found virtually everywhere, from mountain glaciers to Canada's most remote lakes, and even in your morning coffee.
You know, even in the coffee cups in the Tim Hortons or Starbucks, there's also a thin layer of plastics.
Future iterations of the testing kit might be able to identify different types of plastic in the same sample, or be used to test much more complex samples out in the field, allowing scientists to measure microplastic levels in lakes and oceans. It's a device that could very well change our understanding of what's in our water and what's in our bodies. Darius Madavi, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's downtown Vancouver, and it's getting hot in here. Again, Darius will have your BC-wide forecast after this.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox. British Columbia is heading to the polls on October 19th. Keep informed with CBC News for in-depth analysis, interviews, and breaking news that can help you decide the province's future. Download and tune in with the free CBC News app and online at cbcnews.ca. For news you can trust, stay connected wherever you are with the CBC News app.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Doris Madavi is here with our BC-wide weather forecast as it turns downright hot in some places.
Oh yes, hot and sunny, although the sun is setting much sooner than I would like. And I've said that already this week, and I will say it again because it keeps getting dark too early. But other than that, ridge of high pressure building in, hot, sunny, sticking around until at least late Sunday into early next week. Then we may see it move off a little bit. Doesn't seem like we're going to see too drastic a change as of now. Maybe a little bit of precipitation on the lower mainland sort of mid next week, but too early to say for sure. For now, just a bit of cloud moving in very late in the weekend and into early next week. What is happening, though, that's very different from up here, where we're getting temperatures in some places, maybe the mid-30s in the southern interior and on the inland parts of Vancouver Island. Down in the States, hitting very much above that. That ridge of high pressure that's bringing us pleasant summer-like temperatures. Here, absolutely baking under a heat wave. One of the worst of the summer, absolutely. And I want to highlight this again because Phoenix, Arizona, 100 days in a row with temperatures over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 38 degrees Celsius. That is a long time to be baking under temperatures like that. So definitely something worth highlighting. All these areas, though, under excessive heat warnings and will likely continue to be over the next few days as those temperatures remain until that ridge of high pressure hopefully moves off as we get into early next week. Now, turning back to BC, let's take a look at the cloud building into the North Island later this week. Late Thursday and into Friday, it seems like we'll have some cloud build in. Hopefully it'll clear up at times so you guys get some sunshine up there too, but for now, it does seem like it'll be fairly consistent or persistent through the weekend. Across the province, mostly they're seeing that cloud build in up in the northwest and again, making its way down the coast to the North Island. But other than that, a little bit of moisture feeding in up into the northwest, a little bit of precipitation, but overall, very calm across the province. No thunderstorms expected tomorrow or likely on Friday either. And generally across the province, again, temperatures are continuing to climb above seasonal. In the south especially, again, 35 degrees in many places and sticking with that for at least a couple days, dropping a little bit sooner for places over on the coast, but in the interior, sticking in the 30s at least through the weekend. Across the province tomorrow, again, nothing but sunshine, a little bit of cloud up in the north at times, but generally clearing up throughout the day wherever we do see that cloud. And pretty much here in Vancouver, it's a similar story. No cloud really expected, maybe some fog patches tomorrow morning, but other than that, sunny. Temperatures very high inland, hitting 30 degrees tomorrow and Friday, likely only coming down a little bit for the weekend. And that humidity is going to be really something, feeling like 36 degrees inland tomorrow, Dan. So be ready for a little bit of a, interesting, muggy couple of days.
Delightful. Thanks, Doris.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for Wednesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Good night.